Good day, grade sevens. Today we'll be looking at some of the poetry as well as some of the vocabulary that you will encounter in the poetry. Thereafter, we will go through some of the questions on the comprehension check. So if you look over here, the first word that we see is the word ancestors. And it says an ancestor, also known as a forefather, forelder, or a forebear, is a parent or recursively the parent of an antecedent. For example, a grandparent, a great-grandparent, a great-great-grandparent, and so forth. Ancestor is any person from whom one is descended. So if we had to give an example sentence based on the word ancestor, we could, for example, say, my ancestors are my great-grandparents. Okay, that should make sense. My ancestors are my great-grandparents who are no longer alive. All right? Remember, an ancestor is any person from whom one is descended. Okay? And our next word, as part of our vocabulary, is wisdom. And what does wisdom mean? It is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment, the quality of being wise. Okay? So when we say that someone is wise, we are saying they have a lot of experience, they are knowledgeable, and they have good judgment. Okay? So we can have the other form of the word, which is wisdom. All right? So we could say wisdom is extremely, or is a very important trait, or very important trait for one to possess. Okay? All right? So wisdom is a very important trait for one to possess. It's important to be wise, okay? And to have wisdom in today's world, to have good knowledge, good judgment, okay? And experience. That helps us through life, being wise. And our third word is heed. Now, heed means to pay attention to or to take notice of, okay? So in our example sentence, we could say, take heed of the lesson from your teacher. Take heed of the lesson from your teacher. It means to pay attention to or to take notice of. Right, so that's our vocabulary for today. It's only 3 words: ancestors, wisdom, and heed. All right, we need to understand the meanings of those words or the definitions. Right, and to be able to use them in sentences of our own. We are now going to go on to the poetry, to move on to the poetry in your perspectives. And this is what you will see there. There are a selection of 3 poems that we'll be looking at this week. Here are the names of the poems. It's Turtle Watches, Nature is What We See, and The Sparrow. And here are the words that we just practiced now as well. So let's move on to the poems, to the reading of the poems, as well as to the comprehension check. In the next lesson, we will do the close read questions, the analyzing as an interactive lesson. So here we have The Turtle Watches by Linda Hogan. And she goes on to read, old mother at water's edge used to bow down to them. The turtles coming in from the sea, their many eggs, their eyes streaming water like tears. And I'd see it all, old mother as if in prayer, the turtles called back to where they were born. The hungry watchers standing at the edge of trees, hoping for food when darkness gathers. Years later, swimming in murky waters, a sea turtle swam beside me, both of us watching as if clasped together. In the lineage of the same world, the sweep of the same current, even rising for a breath of air at the same time, still watching. My ancestors call them the keepers of doors, and the shore a realm to other worlds. Both ways and water moves the deep shift of life, back to birth and before, as if there is a path where beings truly meet, as if I am rounding the human corners. If I go through some of the close read and annotate questions, okay, right? You will go through that in your books as well on your own, all right? I said you will go through the close read on your own. Right, and then we have nature is what we see. There we see a picture of a squirrel, and this poem was written by Emily Dickinson. Nature is what we see. The hill, the afternoon, squirrel, eclipse, the bumblebee. Nay, nature is heaven. Nay in this context means no. No, nature is heaven. Nature is what we hear. The bobolink. What is the bobolink? If we go further down, it means a small bird. Here we see it. The sea, thunder, the cricket. Nay, nature is harmony. Nature is what we know, but have no art to say. So impotent our wisdom is to her sincerity. Right, we're going to move on to the next poem, which is The Sparrow by Paul Laurence Dunbar. A little bird with plumage brown beside my window flutters down. A moment chirps its little strain, 10 taps upon my window pane, and chirps again, and hops along to call my notice to its song. But I work on, nor heed its lay, take notice of its lay, till in neglect it flies away. Its lay there also refers to the eggs that it's laying, the new life, okay, or a song. So birds of peace and hope and love come fluttering earthward from above, to settle on life's windowsills and ease our load of earthly ills. But we, in traffic's rush and din, too deep engaged to let them in, with deadened heart and sense plod on, nor know our loss till they are gone. So in all three poems, which we will be discussing in our interactive lesson more in depth and at length, we will look at specific techniques and the deeper meanings of these poems, all right? Let's go through some of these questions. Turtle watchers, what are the hungry watchers doing? Okay, so if we go back to the first poem, which is Turtle Watchers, the question asks us, what are the hungry watchers doing? Okay, so now we need to look for the word hungry watchers. And if we see here, the hungry watchers standing at the edge of trees, hoping for food when darkness gathers. That's what the hungry watchers are doing. They're hungry and they're watching. What are they doing? They're hoping for food when darkness comes, okay? They're hungry. They're hoping for food. So that's what the watchers are doing in that poem. Let's check. The hungry watchers are waiting for darkness and hoping to eat. What happens years later? Let's go back to that poem. What happens years later? Okay, that's where we are. Years later, swimming in murky waters, a sea turtle swam beside me, both of us watching as if clasped together in the lineage of the same world. Okay, so let's see. Years later, the speaker swims next to a sea turtle, that's exactly what I just read, and feels connected to it and to her ancestors. Nature is what we see poem. What does the first stanza say nature is? It tells us. The first stanza says nature is what we see. Number two, what does the second stanza say about nature? The second stanza says nature is what we hear. Finally, the third stanza says nature is what we know. And in the last poem, Sparrow, remember I said, when analyzing poetry, there's much deeper meanings that we need to read into. But for this lesson, we're only going to look at the comprehension check. Number three, Poem number 3. What does the speaker do in response to the bird beside his or her window? What does the speaker do when the bird is beside her or his window? A little bird with plumage brown beside my window flutters down. A moment chirps its little strain. 10 taps upon my window pane and chirps again and hops along to call my notice to its song. But I work on, nor heed its lay. I do not listen or take note of its song, till in neglect it flies away. So the speaker is telling us here that he or she is ignoring the bird's call, okay? What does the speaker do in response to the bird beside his or her window? The speaker is busy and ignores the sparrow. Number 2, according to the speaker, how do we plod on? Okay, how do we plod on? Let's go up. Let's check the poem. According to the speaker, how do we plod on? So birds of peace and hope and love come fluttering earthward from above to settle on life's windowsills and ease our load of earthly ills. Ease whose load? Human beings. When birds sing, it gives us some sort of peace and ease our load of earthly ills, but we, in traffic's rush and din, too deep engaged to let them in. We don't want these birds to take our worries away because we're too busy in life. With deadened heart and sense plod on, nor know our loss till they are gone. So let's go back to this question. According to the speaker, how do we plod on? We plod on with a deadened heart. Okay? Our heart is not alive towards them, and we do not see these birds. That is how we just plod on. We carry on regardless of the birds wanting to make a positive change in our life, using nature to help us. Okay? So that brings us to the end of this session, grade 7s for English for this week. In our next session, in our interactive session, we will be looking at the close read, analyzing the structures of the poems, looking at similes and metaphors used in these poems. Thank you so much, grade 7s.